But we are going to do a separate program with my wife Renata where you're going to talk more specifically about non-dual pointing.
Yes.
Which was the process covered in this interview.
Yeah.
So, and then I know you talked about a period of integration and clarity after that. So something happened, and you saw things differently.
Yes.
So how did that impact on your day-to-day life? What changed?
The main thing that happened, and I think this is true, for most people that I've spoken to where there's been a similar shift, and that is that seeking stops. Because up until that point, we're convinced that we really are this human being, bound in time and space, moving through time towards something that we want. Now, that can be a spiritual motivation. It can be, trying to find the perfect relationship. It can be trying to find, somewhere to live that you like, trying to have children, trying to have a good job, trying to make money. All of those things, they're all forms of seeking. Spiritual seeking tends to come after those have been exhausted, but really there's no pattern to it. But in terms of the integration, what took place for me is that the seeking stopped, because having seen clearly who and what you are, there's no possibility of any seeking. So then what happens is there's an unfoldment that takes place, because you realise that actually you're already where you need to be. And then there's a kind of fine-tuning where one's own inner knowing, one's own intuition becomes much more clear, and it's something that's just totally reliable. So even though there's a desire to kind of share this, because consciousness is at the helm, it can only be shared when consciousness gives you the nod. And so there isn't anything you can do about that. But in terms of personal life, the integration that took place is that actually, because there is only present awareness, then everything takes place within present awareness. So the unfolding of life, all of the stuff that continues, which is, it appears as though time's going by, it appears as though there's an aging process, that things are changing on the surface of life. It's all from the point of view of a completely stable knowing of who and what you truly are.
Yeah, I think this state can also be described as essence and true nature. I think other schools might put them in that terminology.
Yeah.
Okay. And then kind of life started to move from a different reference point in one way?
I suppose there's a line in the Bible, actually, that Jesus used, which is where he said, the lilies of the field neither toil nor spin. And what happens in the development of consciousness is there's a certain point that's reached where seeking comes to an end, and then life begins to go by itself almost, so that there's a knowing of what to do in certain situations, as they arise. You kind of do that, but because there's no motivation to do something to get somewhere, then everything is purely for what it is. So, for instance, being here is totally about just being here with you, that there isn't anything else that actually matters. So it's actually giving full attention to everything. So whether it's in terms of a relationship, or whether it's in terms of a perception or an experience, everything is just seen purely and totally for what it is, and you're just fully present with that. The state before that is that there's something missing, that this is incomplete, this can be improved on, that actually I can do something to be in a better situation than this. So full attention isn't something that is available to you.
No, I understand, yeah. Something I liked what you said earlier was that people are always trying to find happiness. I know this for myself, it's very true. And I remember going to a weekend seminar years ago, and it's Anthony Robbins actually, who I liked at that time very much. And he was saying that basically the human mind is always trying to move to what it perceives as pleasure, and away from what it perceives as pain.
Yes.
I thought that simple statement was just so accurate for me, and probably for most other people.
Yeah.
And even people that are very you go through this process, and you get money, and you get material things, and hopefully you have your health, and you get a good relationship, and have beautiful children or whatever. But still, this feeling, it's not enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we all try in our own way, and it may seem unintelligent what we're doing, but most of us are actually trying to move towards what would appear to be an intelligent place of happiness.
Yes.
But unfortunately, happiness on a human level doesn't really contain the magic missing ingredients, does it?
No, it doesn't, and that's part of the incentive in a way, or that's part of the way consciousness unfolds, because it's that incompletion that allows the game to be played, because as there really is only present awareness, then everything is already home, so there isn't anything to find. But the way consciousness plays the game is that most of the stuff in the manifestation is actually in contrast to its own essential nature. So it's the idea of not being home, it's the idea that there's something missing, it's the idea of incompletion, it's the idea of impermanence, it's the idea of imperfection. So all of the things that are actually the polar opposite of one's true nature are apparent in the manifestation. And in one respect, the reason it's like that is to allow consciousness to know itself fully, because it's by the contrast of the imperfection that perfection can be known.
Well, I understand that as a theoretical thing. Partly, sometimes it's practical for me, but not always. And I'm wondering, so you, David Bingham, as your human persona, do you ever have the feeling that something is not perfect? Are you ever striving towards something, or is that all gone for you now?
Well, there are two things going on. There's an ultimate knowing, there's an ultimate trusting that everything is as it should be. And I fully accept that. If a terrorist walked through the door and shot us both, then that will be all right. But obviously, there are human responses to things. So fear can still arise, and pain, physical pain can still arise. But the difference is that even though for the human experience, those things can still be experienced, underneath that there's a knowing of the impermanence of those things, that they don't actually grab you for very long. They can come in and they go out again, but it isn't something that the mind gets hold of and starts to, spin a big story about.
So when fear or anxiety, whatever comes up for you, you kind of just watch it as something passing? Is that how you would say you deal with it? Or...
Yeah,
just try to explain your process when you get frightened about something for some reason. What actually happens?